Welcome to my live teaching learning session of Indian Economy 2 BECE 146. Today is the second session of this paper. Now we will do today the topic of fiscal policy and trade and investment policy. In last session we have studied about what is macroeconomic policy, what are the main objectives of macroeconomic policies, and what is the main important role of monetary policy under macroeconomic policy? We have discussed about monetary policy. Now today we will discuss about fiscal policy and trade and investment policy, which is also related with macroeconomic policies. And macroeconomics, you know that studies always whole units of the economy in totality, like aggregate demand, aggregate supply, total saving, total investment, national income, theory of employment, balance of payment, foreign exchange rate, etc. So fiscal policy, what is the meaning of fiscal policy? In fiscal policy, this is the main policy of the government. Monetary policy is made by Reserve Bank of India, but fiscal policy is made by government. And the main aim of the government is to provide social welfare and to do more and more social welfare activities so that country people uh, can get maximum advantage. So the main objective of fiscal policy is to equal distribution of income and level so that all country people remain equal. There will be no class struggle, no differences between rich and poor. It means in each and every economy, equity should be exist. Or equity means all when the distribution of income is equal and when all country people are equal, that is called equity. Next, the main objective of fiscal policy is stability. Each and every country wants to achieve higher growth rate of GDP. And if you achieve higher growth rate of GDP, then you must want to be stabilized on that higher GDP growth rate. So stability is the main goal of fiscal policy. Stability may be price stability may be foreign exchange rate stability may be growth stability, and third target is growth. Growth is very important topic and very important target of the monetary policy as well as fiscal policy. What is the meaning of growth? Growth is considered always as economic growth. And economic growth is a continuous process, is a long run process in which national income and per capita income rises continuously for the long time period. So equity, stability and growth, all these are included in fiscal policy. Now we will discuss in detail what is fiscal policy, what are the main objectives of fiscal policy, and what are the fiscal development tools, and what type of fiscal policy at present in our country. Now let us start from the meaning of this fiscal policy. Fiscal policy meaning. Fiscal policy is that policy in which government make their policy related to public revenues and public expenditures. Or we can say that any decision to change the price level, composition, or timing of government expenditure, or to vary the burden, structure, or frequency of the tax payment, according to G.K. Shah. Next definition is given by Otto Akistin. That definition is changes in taxes and expenditure which aim at short run goals of full employment, price level, and stability. Fiscal policy, as I said, that fiscal policy is that policy which is made by government. And the main tools of the fiscal policy are public revenue, public expenditure, public budget, or public finance and public debt. These four are the main tools of fiscal policy. In first tool, public revenue, government collect revenue through taxable sources and non-taxable sources. The main source of income of the government is taxation. As you know that there are two types of tax. One is direct tax and other is indirect tax. Direct taxes are those taxes which paid by the same person on which this burden of direct tax falls. That burden can't be shiftable and bear by the same person on which government imposed the taxes like income tax, gift tax, wealth tax, property tax, etc. These all are the examples of direct taxes. Indirect taxes are those taxes on which government impose taxes on producers, but the burden of tax, first burden of the tax bear by producer, but the last burden of tax bear by consumer. At present, in indirect taxes, GST is going on. GST is goods and services tax. It means whatever goods and services are provided by the government to country people have to pay the taxes on those goods and services. Services like banking, insurance, transportation, communication, all these services government impose taxes. And the person who avail these services, who use these services, have to pay taxes. And goods which we buy from the market, each and every commodity at present mainly in GST range or government imposed taxes on goods and services, that is called indirect taxes, which first burden of the tax falls on producer but the last burden of the tax will bear by consumers. So taxation is the main source of government revenue. And sometimes government collect non-taxable sources, income from non-taxable sources like government collect fees, fines, penalties, license fees, and special assessment, and government escheat that money on which nobody claim for that. If a person has no fixed their nominee on bank account and any other asset or property, then that property or asset or money goes to government. This is the estate called, and this type of source of income of the government is called non-taxable source of income. And government has a lot of power. Government can collect income from donation, grants from World Bank, from IMF, from other foreign countries. So government can collect revenue through both the sources. One is taxable, taxation sources, and other is non-taxation. And public enterprises also earn income. Their surpluses are also called non-taxable source of income. Next part of the fiscal policy or tool of fiscal policy is public expenditure. You know that government has to do some welfare activities because at present government main function is to not only provide security from internal and external warfare. Government should do so many welfare activities for the country people, for the sake of the country people welfare, so that because government is democratic government, so if government provide more and more social benefits to the country people, then country people also encourage and give votes to that government who are giving so many facilities to the country people. So government should spend money on so many works, but government mainly government mainly spend their money on development works and non-development works like defense, law and order, And development works like agriculture, industrial development, infrastructure development, irrigation facility, electricity, power generation, water supply, sanitation, etc. All these expenditures are called development expenditure. And the law and order, if government want to maintain law and order, and on defense, government spend more than 50% of their GDP mainly on defense activities to protect our country from warfare. So government expenditure based on development and non-development, we can classify it planned expenditure and non-planned also. Third, the main tool of fiscal policy is public debt. Government borrowing power is unlimited. Government can borrow money from internal sources as well as from external sources. It means government can collect money not only from taxable or non-taxable sources. Government can take borrowings when government need money for the country's development. Then government power of borrowing is unlimited. Government can borrow money from internal and external both the sources. And next, the main fourth tool of the fiscal policy is budget. You know that budget is a systematic record. Budget is a expected record of public expenditures and public revenues during an accounting year or financial year. The main aim of this budget is to plan for all the expenditures which government will made in during an accounting year, and for that expenditure government from which sources government will collect money. So government always show that statement in which public expenditure and public revenue uh, are expected during an accounting year. So these are the four main tools of fiscal policy: public revenue, public expenditure, public debt, and budget. So changes in taxes and expenditures which aim at short-run goal of full employment and price level and stability. This is the main goal of the fiscal policy. This definition uh, was given by Otto Eckstein. So this is the meaning of fiscal policy. Next is the main objective of fiscal policy in India. What are the main objectives of fiscal policy in India? So first main objective of fiscal policy is development by effective mobilization of resources. Government can mobilize resources in such a manner so that efficient or effective use can be available of all the resources in an economy. Next is efficient allocation of financial resources. We should use all the financial resources efficiently so that we can achieve all our set targets and our economic growth can move on. Third is reduction in inequalities of income and wealth. This is also the main goal of fiscal policy. Government main aim is to do social welfare activities, and government always redistribute the income level. Government collect more taxes from rich person and provide subsidies to the poor person, and government provide so many benefits to the poor country people so that equity can maintain in our economy and distribution of income can be equal, and inequality should be reduced in an economy because inequality make the differences between rich and poor people, and if differences or class struggle between haves and haves not will be increased, then this will create a very difficult situation or problem in country. So reduction in inequality of income and wealth is also the main goal of fiscal policy. Next is price stability. This price stability is the main goal of monetary policy as well as fiscal policy also. Because if price rises at a faster rate, inflation occur in the economy, and if price falls at the faster rate, this is called deflation, and both these situations are not good for the economy, because inflation, at the time of inflation, the value of money goes down, and at the time of deflation, value of money goes up. But if prices will fall at the very rapid rate, then producers will discourage, production will not be held, employment will not generate, income will not generate. Then if you will not get income, then how can you create the demand for goods and services? It means whole the activities like production, consumption, expenditure, all the activities will damage in case of deflation. So deflation is much worse than inflation. So price should remain always stable, so that the main goal of monetary policy and fiscal policy is price stability and control of inflation. Next is employment generation. Employment generation is also the main goal of fiscal policy as well as monetary policy. We should create and generate employment opportunities for the country people, so that all country people can get employment opportunities. If all country people will get employment, then their contribution in GDP will also rise, our economic growth will rise, income level of the country will also rise, and standard of living of the country people will definitely rise. So if we want to achieve higher economic growth and development, employment should be generated by the government. So this is the main goals of fiscal policy. Now we can read in detail of all the goals. The main goals of fiscal policy in India is: first is development by effective mobilization of resources. The principal objective of fiscal policy is to ensure rapid economic growth and development. This objective of economic growth and development can be achieved by mobilization of financial resources also. The central government and state government in India have used fiscal policy to mobilize resources. Financial resources can be mobilized by taxation. Government can collect or impose heavy taxes on rich person, and government can give rebate to the poor person and provide subsidies to the poor person, so that inequality can be removed. Next is public saving. The resources can be mobilized through public savings by reducing government expenditure and increasing surpluses of public sector enterprises. Third is private saving. Through the effective fiscal measures such as tax benefit, the government can raise resources from private sector and households. Resources can be mobilized through government borrowings by ways of treasury bills, issue of government bonds, etc., loans from domestic and foreign parties, and by deficit financing. Deficit financing is the main source of government earning. Government, because government has full control over each and every activity of the economy, so government is the main, because RBI is the bankers bank, government bank. So if government need money and government is not collecting money through public debt or from public borrowings, then government can give order to RBI to issue paper currency at the time of uh, warfare or any need. If government need money and government has no way to get money, then government can use this deficit financing method. And deficit financing is the method in which government can give order to RBI to issue more and more paper currency for the development of the country. If government want to uh, overcome the situation of deflation or recession of the economy, at that time when private investors are not encouraged to invest their money in business, then government can solve this problem of recession and depression, and through this deficit financing. So deficit financing is the main and important source of if any budget, if government budget is in deficit, then government can use this deficit financing method. So deficit financing is a way in which RBI issues paper currency, coins, notes, etc. to solve the problem of deficiency in budget, or if government expenditures are more than government revenue, then economy budget will be called deficit budget. And to compensate this budget, RBI issues paper currency, that is called deficit financing. So these are the main objectives of fiscal policy in India. Next is fiscal development. This fiscal development is given by Economic Survey 2021. Calibrated fiscal approach adopted by India, best suited for the country evolving economic situation. Expenditures policy initially aimed at supporting vulnerable sections, reoriented to boosting overall demand and ramping up capital spending as India unlocked. Monthly GST collection crossed rupees 1 lakh crore in December 2020, marked consequently for last 3 months highest level since inception of GST. And reforms in tax administration incentives incentivized tax compliance through increased transparency and accountability. This is the fiscal development which is made in the year of 2021 by the government, in which government expenditures are boosting up the economy, and government is collecting too much money from indirect taxes and direct taxes sources, and tax administration reform system also increased transparency and accountability. This is called fiscal developments, which is made by the government, and this is the data given by Economic Survey 2021 year. Next is merits of fiscal policy. What are the advantages of fiscal policy which is made by the government? The main merits of fiscal policy of the government of India is number one is capital formation. Government fiscal policy, the main tools of this policy is public expenditure, public revenue, public debt, and budget. The main aim of this fiscal policy is to increase the capital formation. Capital formation is called investment or increase in net capital asset, like fixed assets like buildings, machines, equipments, inventories, etc. So capital can be formed and capital can be accumulated or capital can be generated with the help of this fiscal policy. So fiscal policy is very important uh, in generating the capital formation or increasing the investment structure of the economy. Second is mobilization of resources. Government can mobilize the available resources of the country in such a manner, and government can redistribute the income of the country in such a manner so that inequalities of income and wealth can be reduced. Third is incentives to saving. Government can provide incentives to saving to stabilize the price level, to provide incentives or rebates on taxes. If you do more and more saving, then government can give you rebate. For example, at present, the rebate of taxes 1,50,000 on savings. If you save your money in NSC or in PPF or in long term savings you have done, that is the main source of tax rebate on which government provide rebates on taxation. Next is, so government can promote and government can encourage country people. If you want to uh, get rebate, you want to uh, avoid the paying more taxes, then you can take this advantage, and incentives to saving is provided by also government. Next is inducement to private sector. Government can also encourage to private sector. Government can provide uh, more and more facilities to the more and more infrastructure facilities to the private sector, so that business enterprises can set their businesses in each and every region, either it may be rural area or in urban area, So inducement or motivated. Inducement means motivation. Government can encourage to private sector because during the policy of new economic policy of 1991, government encouraged private sectors, and at present government is de-investing the money in public sector, and through this disinvestment process government encouraging privatization. And the policy of LPG, which is called liberalization, privatization, and globalization, which is made in 1991 during the economic crisis of that time period. And in this policy, privatization is encouraged by government. Next is reduction of inequality. Government, through this fiscal policy, government can reduce the inequality of income and wealth among the country people. Next is government can promote the exports so that our balance of payment remains favorable. If our exports are increasing and imports are reducing, then our balance of payment will be in favor, or it will be favorable. So government can promote export by giving exporters to provide more and more facilities, and government has set up export import bank which provide financial facility to the exporters. Government can give concessions, and the government can provide fiscal soaps to the exporters so that exporters can encourage and increase their production level and give more and more contribution in exports. Next is the merit of fiscal policy is alleviation of poverty and unemployment. Government can alleviate poverty and unemployment through the specific programs like Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana, Swर्ण Jayanti Gramin Rozgar Yojana, Swर्ण Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which provides 100 days job assurance and guarantee. Government has launched so many schemes and so many programs for generating the employment opportunities in rural area as well as in urban area, so that unemployment problem can be solved. And both the problems are interrelated. Poverty and unemployment both are twins problem. If unemployment problem will solve, then automatically poverty problem will also be solved because both are twins. So government has launched so many programs which generate employment opportunities for the country people in rural and urban area in both. So, with the help of this fiscal policy, poverty and unemployment problem can be alleviated or eliminated. So, these are the merits of fiscal policy. Next is drawback of fiscal policy. You know that each coin has two sides. So pros and cons. It means where we have discussed about the merits of fiscal policy, is there are so many lacks or so many drawbacks are also exist of fiscal policy. First is delays, recognition lag. There is a three deficiencies which occurs in fiscal policy. That's why we can say that fiscal policy is not very perfect policy, and it's not a very systematic policy through which we can achieve all the set targets in a very effective manner or in an efficient way. There are so many drawbacks also. One is recognition lag, the amount of time it takes policy makers to realize that a policy is needed. Government always take so much time in any decision making, and in any recognition there is a lag is a time difference. There is a too much time difference exists. While policy makers make policy, they take too much time period. Next is decision lag, the amount of time needed to formulate and implement an appropriate policy, in which if government, you know that in government offices there is a too much time lag in taking the decisions regarding any issues or any policies implementation or formulation. But in private sector, there is no time taken while taking any decisions regarding the promotion or formulation the policies and implementing the policies. They will not take too much time. But in government sector, decision lag or too much time period taken by the government to formulate an implementation of any appropriate policy. And the third lag is impact lag or execution lag. The amount of time between a policy's implementation and its having an effect on the economy, it also takes very long time period. So these three are the drawbacks of fiscal policy, in which first is recognition lag. Lag is the difference of time, the amount of time it takes uh, by policymakers to realize that policy is needed. Decision lag in this, the amount of time needed to formulate an implementation of an appropriate policy. There is a time lag in between of this, and the impact lag is the amount of time between a policy's implementation and it's having an effect on the economy. That is called impact lag. So these 3 points are considered in drawbacks of fiscal policy. Next is types of fiscal policy. Fiscal policies are basically of two types, just same as monetary policy. Monetary policy also have two types. One is expansionary and other is contractionary. Same as fiscal policy has two types. One is expansionary fiscal policy and other is contractionary fiscal policy. It is clear by its name, expansionary fiscal policy. In this, government expand the expenditures, government increase the expenditures, and government cut the revenues, and government reduce the taxation rate so that economy can expand or can increase. So in this expansionary fiscal policy, government spend more and more money on development and non-development works, and reduce the rate of taxation and impose less taxes on producers and consumers. When government cut the taxes rate and government spend more and more money, that is called expansionary fiscal policy. This policy generally made by the government at the time of deflation. If government want to solve the problem of deflation, then government will reduce the taxes and government will increase the expenditures so that we can overcome from this situation of deflation or depression. Then government at the time of depression or recession, government always make expansionary fiscal policy. And at the time of inflation, when price is increasing, and if government want to control the price level, then government will impose more and more taxes on consumers and producers so that consumers expenditures will reduce, and their purchasing power will fall, their demand will fall, so that price can be stabilized or can be controlled. So at the time of inflation, government always use this contractionary fiscal policy, in which government impose more taxes on consumer and producer, and government cut the public expenditures at the time of inflation. So these are the two types of fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy is that policy in which a decline in investment has decreased aggregate demand, so real GDP has fallen and also employment has declined. A possible fiscal solution is because at the time of deflation or depression, investment always falls, aggregate demand falls, GDP falls, employment opportunities falls. At the time, at this time, fiscal policy can take the solution of this problem. Government can increase public expenditures, which shift aggregate demand to the right by more than the change in government expenditure due to the multiplier effect. And next is decrease in taxes. Government will decrease or cut the tax rate to raise the level of income of the consumer and producer, and consumption rises by MPC times marginal propensity to consume times and change in income also. In this case, aggregate demand will shift to the right by the multiple change in consumption. So due to the multiplier effect, so this is the main fact of expansionary fiscal policy, in which government cut the tax rate and government increase the public expenditure. And this is the combination of this, when government use this both things in a combined way, like combination of increased government expenditure and reduced taxes, is called expansionary fiscal policy. And if the budget was initially balanced, expansionary fiscal policy creates a budget deficit. Because if government spend more money and government revenue will decrease due to cut in tax rate, at that time deficit budget will occur. So if the budget initially imbalanced, and if government follows expansionary fiscal policy, then it will create a budget deficit. Next is the conclusion of this and contractionary fiscal policy is the vice versa situation of this expansionary fiscal policy. The conclusion of this only fiscal policy topic conclusion is that monetary and fiscal policy are both are important policies of macroeconomic policy, and both are important factors in moving countries' currency value. Government can influence currency's direction in the short term but not manipulate currency value in the long run. Manipulative and unsuccessful fiscal and monetary policy can have unintended consequences that have a long lasting impact on currency value. The global imbalances in currency, goods and services, and capital market due to ineffective government policies will continue to be reflected in currency value fluctuating, since the market is always seeking true values, a spot where it can reach equilibrium. So monetary policy tricks do not work. So at that time, when monetary policy can't achieve alone all the set targets, then fiscal policy is a complementary policy, and it can also help to the monetary policy to achieve all the set targets. So monetary policy and fiscal policy, these two are the main important macroeconomic policies through which government can achieve their set targets like price stability, full employment, economic growth, equality between income and wealth, and increase employment opportunities. So if we want to achieve all these set targets, we should use both the policies in a combined way. Not only single policy can achieve all the set targets. Monetary policy and fiscal policy are not substitutable. These two policies are complementary to each other, and these two policies in a combined way can achieve all the set targets. So both the policies are very important, and both the policies are considered at a very important policies of macroeconomic policies. So this is the conclusion of fiscal policy which we have studied right now. Next is fiscal support package. What fiscal support package is announced by the government, and fiscal support package number 1 and fiscal support package number 2 announced by the government in first package announced by the government in March 2020, and the second package was announced in by the government in May 2020. So first package is that some measures to help the poor, 1.7 lakh crore in Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package Yojana, including insurance cover of Indian rupees 50 lakh per health worker fighting COVID-19, and free 5 kilogram of wheat, rice and 1 kilogram of pulses every month for 80 crore people, extended to November 2021. And the second package of fiscal support, which is provided by the government, is some measures included, in which increase in Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which was made in 2015, Manrega, allocation by $400 billion in addition to 600 billion in financial year budget of 21, and the borrowing limit for states raised by 2% of GDP to be increased in a phased manner and subject to riders. And third is higher health spending. Announced in February 2021. Some measures include Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, a new centrally sponsored scheme launched within 642 billion outlay over 6 years for better medical infrastructure and better coverage of water supply, urban cleanliness, vaccination, and government spend lots of money for overcoming the problem of this COVID-19. So these are called fiscal support packages, which are made by government, which are supported or given by government for the development of the country people, for the welfare of the country people. So government has made so much expenditure. So government has spent too much money on the development of the country people, either in case of health care facilities, increasing medical facilities, insurance cover facilities, employment opportunities. Government is generating employment opportunities through Manrega, and government is provide rationing or wheat and rice or at a very subsidized price for the country people, so that each and every country people can afford food and starvation, and no one can die mm, with starvation. So these are called fiscal supports package 1 and 2, uh, which is made by the government in fiscal policy. Now, next is fiscal deficit. What is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is measured in terms of percentage of GDP of a country. The higher the percentage of fiscal deficit, the difficult is it for the country. Fiscal deficit, whenever fiscal deficit increases, government situation will fall in trouble. So fiscal deficit is a very important concept, and we must know what is fiscal deficit and how we can control this fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is the difference between total expenditure and total revenue excluding borrowings. So increase in the fiscal deficit would point that the spending is increasing at a faster pace as compared to the earning of the country. It means if total expenditures are increasing and then total income or total revenue, so to finance this spending, country will have to borrow debt from different sources. So analysis of fiscal deficit is when a government total expenditure exceeds the total revenue that it generates, excluding money from borrowing, that is called fiscal deficit. And this deficit differs from debt, which is an accumulation of yearly deficits. So fiscal deficit is equals to budget expenditure minus budget receipt. And budget expenditure is called total expenditure, in which capital expenditure and revenue expenditure both are included. And in budget receipt, we take two receipts like revenue receipt and capital receipt. So, if total expenditures are more than total revenues, excluding money from borrowing, that is called fiscal deficit. At the time of economic crisis during the period of 1991, due to Gulf War with, between of Iran and Iraq, at that time India's fiscal deficit was at near about 8.7%, which is very higher. So, if fiscal deficit increases at a very faster rate, it will create a very difficult situation for the economy. In so that fiscal deficit must be remains lower, so economy then economy can achieve higher growth. Now, next topic is trade and investment. As I told you that in this session, we will discuss about fiscal policy and investment policy, trade and investment policy also. So fiscal policy we have completed. Now this is trade and investment policy, in which first topic is import substitution industrialization. This import substitution industrialization, in short form, we can say that ISI, a policy that advocates replacing foreign imports with domestic production. What is the meaning of this import? If we buy goods and services from abroad, that is called import. And if we sell goods and services to abroad, that is called export. And as you know that at present all the economies are open economies, all economies are engaged in international trade activities, all countries are doing imports and exports with rest of the world, and if our exports are more than imports, that is good for the country and that is good for the nation, and it will create healthy balance of payment and favorable balance of payment it will give us. And if imports are more than exports, then it will create deficit or unfavorable situation in balance of payment. So import should be substitutable. Import substitution industrialization tells us that we should substitute those imports which we are taking from rest of the world. So if we are buying goods and services, and if we can make that goods and services in our country, then we should make those goods in our country, not buying those goods from abroad. So, import substitution industrialization is a policy which advocates replacing foreign imports with domestic production. Pursued by developing countries in the 20th century, nationalization of vital industries, high tax rate, it means if we want to follow this ISI policy, then we should impose more taxes on imports and provide more subsidies on exports, and overvalued our currency rate and protective barriers to trade. We should not follow free trade policy. We should impose taxes on imports and subsidies to exporters, and to promote exports and to discourage imports. And we should use protective trade policy, in which exports should be protected, exports should be promoted, and imports should be reduced. High social and economic cost, system kept high prices, क्योंकि if because if our goods prices will become higher, then no one if our country's product will become higher, it means if we export those goods whose price is higher, then we can get more and more money from abroad. And system reduced innovation and efficiency, and we should improve our system of innovation and development, so that import substitution industrialization can be successful, and it can reduce our imports and increase our exports. Next is import substituting industrialization. When this ISI policy started, from World War II until the 1970s, many developing countries attempted to accelerate their development by limiting imports of manufactured goods to foster a manufacturing sector serving the domestic market. If we want to produce more and more goods in our domestic country, and if our domestic industries, we should promote those industries. So government should always follow this import substituting industrialization policy, because this policy can increase our exports and decrease our imports. So, the most important economic argument for protecting manufacturing industries is the infant industry argument. You know that in our country, small scale and cottage industries are very much helpful in generating the employment opportunities. And so, we should protect cottage and small scale industries, and to develop more and more industries in our country, in each and every region. Either it may be developed or underdeveloped, it may be rural or urban. So if we want to improve our industrialization growth, and if we want to increase industrialization in whole country, then we should follow this import substituting industrialization, in which domestic industries should encourage and should be protected from foreign competition. And the main aim of this policy is to protect manufacturing industries and infant industries, and to promote or to increase the growth rate of industrialization. So this is called import substitute industrialization. Next is growth strategies, export led growth. In order to achieve export led growth, it is assumed that country will need to adopt certain policies. First is liberalized policy. You know, India is a liberalized economy. India follow LPG policy, liberalization, privatization, globalization during 1991, when economy was in crisis time period due to the Gulf War between Iran and Iraq. So government follow this liberalized policy. So trade should be liberalized or open up domestic markets to foreign competition order to gain access to foreign markets. Second is, if we want to increase our export led growth, then we should first of all liberalize our economy. It means we should open up the economy with the foreign competition and open up the domestic markets to foreign competition. Next is liberalized capital flows. We should reduce restrictions on FDI. It means we should promote more and more FDI. What is FDI? FDI is foreign direct investment, in which foreign companies can directly invest their money in host countries or developing countries. They can bring their money, they can bring their asset, they can bring their enterprises in host country or developing country to increase the production of goods and services. And with the help of this FDI in our country, production will rise and we can export more and more goods to the abroad. So liberalized capital flow should be exist if we want to achieve this export led growth. Third is floating exchange rate. At present, exchange rate is floating. Exchange rate is that rate at which one country's currency can be converted into another country's currency. Exchange rate mainly of two types. One is fixed exchange rate, other is flexible exchange rate. At present, flexible exchange rate is going on, which is which fix the exchange rate through the intersection of demand curve and supply curve of foreign currency. So fixed exchange rate was called gold standardized exchange rate, in which gold was the standardized currency, and for each exports and imports we have to take gold and we have to give gold for each transaction. But at present, gold standard uh, exchange rate system has abolished, or at present floating exchange rate system is going on, in which market forces or demand and supply curve automatically fix the exchange rate. Next is infrastructure. If we want to achieve export led growth, then we should increase our infrastructure facilities. Government should provide and invest more and more money on infrastructures so that more foreign companies can attract in our country, and they invest their money in our country so that exports can be increased. And deregulation and minimal government intervention. And deregulation means government don't impose more and more regulations or rules, not put so many restrictions on business enterprises. If government intervention will be minimum, and if government deregulate the system of the rules and regulation, then freely businessmen will enter in the business enterprises and they can invest more money in business enterprises. For example, at the time of 1969, government made MRTP Act, Monopolistic Restrictive Trade Practices Act, in which only investor can invest money in business only 100 crore rupees, and if a person invest more than 100 crore rupees, government were imposed so many restrictions, so many taxes on that business enterprises. But at present, this in during 1991 time period, government replaced this act. MRTP Act has been abolished, and at present, Competition Act 2002 is going on, in which government deregulate and the interference of the government also minimize. It means at present, any business enterprises can invest any type of money, more and more money. There is no restriction, there is no limit of set by the government to invest money in business enterprises. It means if you have billions of dollars, billions of rupees, you can invest in your business enterprises without any interference of the government, without any permission taken by the government. It means government has liberalized the economy and government deregulate the system of the industrialization also. This is called export led growth strategy. Next is definition of convertibility. What is convertibility? Convertibility means when rupee is fully convertible with another foreign currency, that is called current account convertibility. And if rupee is fully convertible into another country's currency for capital account transactions and vice versa, that is called capital account convertibility. Just the meaning of this convertibility means if we can convert our country's currency in another country's currency fully, that is called current account convertibility. And if rupee is fully convertible into another currency for capital transactions, then it is called partial convertibility. Convertibility may be fully, may be partial. If we can fully convertible our country's currency in other country's currency for current account transactions like goods and services and unilateral payments, that is called full current account convertibility. And if we convert our currency with another country's currency for capital transactions, that is called partial capital account convertibility. So capital account convertibility means freedom to convert currency both in terms of outflow and inflow for capital transactions. It refers to the freedom to convert local financial assets into foreign financial assets and vice versa. It means if you want to buy property like a large mansion board abroad, there are some limitations by RBI. The limitations are regarding how much rupee you can convert into dollars. This is because India's capital account is not completely free. So it is only partially convertible. So capital transactions are generally partial convertible, but current account transactions are fully convertible. So convertibility can be partial, can be fully. Uh, in an current account transactions, it is called full convertibility, and in capital account transactions, it is called partial convertibility. And current account convertibility means currency can be convertible to all those transactions coming under the category of current account. In this, we can make freedom in respect of payments and transfers for current international transactions. In India, at present, current account transactions are fully convertible and capital account transactions are partially convertible. Next is FDI. What is the meaning of FDI? Foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is that investment which is made by the non-resident entity or person or outside by the country people, India in the capital of an Indian economy or Indian company under Scheduled 1 of Foreign Exchange Management. So, foreign direct investment is generally the meaning of this if foreign companies or multinational corporations invested their money in our country or in a host country or in a developing country, that is called foreign direct investment. At present, foreign direct investment in some industries, 100% FDI is permitted. In some industries, before reform period, which was called 1990 time period, at that time period, 49% FDI was permitted only. But at present, generally 51% FDI is permitted for all, but 100% FDI is permitted for some specific industry. and for some other specific industry 74% FDI is permitted. So in food product industry 100% FDI is permitted. In defense sector 49% FDI is permitted, and in pharmaceutical sector 74% FDI is permitted. And some in some cases government provide 100% FDI, and in some cases government not permitted FDI. So government can provide and not give permission to FDI. This is set by the current regulatory position under FDI policy of 2017. So now this topic will continue in next session. Uh, you have done at present in today's session for fiscal policy and trade and investment policy. And next topic will continue in next session. Thank you.